Dave Attwood, 18-year professional career coming to an end. Why now? Why the decision to announce your retirement at the end of this season?
I think the way that the structure of the game is kind of changing. There's more pressure on being able to deliver on all sides, and I think fundamentally I'm at an age now where my body can't do the things it used to be able to do. There's a large part of that. I still think there's an awful lot I can add to the squad, to the environment. Certainly I feel like there's plenty more rugby left in me in the Premiership, but the truth is, with the demands on a player in the Premiership these days and the restrictions on the salary cap, there's less room for people who might not be available all the time. And I think if a pressure is that I'm going to have to manage my body, manage my training in order to get through, then I'm not going to be contributing on the level that we need to. And I think market forces means that it's a sensible time for me to put the end to it. I think one of the big things, probably last week there were 2 people in our meeting who were 17, so I think they were born after I started playing professional rugby, and I think once that starts happening you need to have a look and think maybe it's time.
Are you at peace with your decision? Have you had time to digest and realise that it's 100% the right thing to do at this point in your life?
Yeah, I think it's a strange one, that, because there's a lot of fear that comes with it. I think nobody wants to be forced into retirement. A lot of people don't really want to retire at all. I think there's an element where the longer you go at it, the more you progress age-wise, you are more accustomed to the idea that soon I'm going to be retiring. But also, on the other hand, you are more acclimatised to being a professional rugby player, to work in this environment, to working with these kind of people, and that kind of makes it, you're more institutionalised. And I think that's the old Brooks Haddon in the Shawshank Redemption kind of phrase. You kind of I'm an institutional man now, and that's quite scary, taking that step. But I think you only grow when things are tough and things are difficult. So I'm looking forward to the next chapter.
You've been in that institutional state for 18 years, as we've said. Talk me back to that Bristol debut against Bath, Power Gen Cup 2005-2006 season. How much do you remember of that day? And there's probably not too many players that were on the park left in today's game.
No, well, I don't think there's anybody at all who is still playing. There are a lot of guys still involved in the game. Obviously, I mean, my biggest memory from that game was Bath legend and stalwart Danny Grucock. He obviously was starting for Bath. I came off the bench for Bristol, and I think I might have played 8 minutes or so. And in the first minute, I got up at the front. It was a wet, horrible day, and stole a line out off of him. Very pleased, very excited, the youth and exuberance. And for 7 minutes and 59 seconds, I then ran away from Danny Grucock as he chased me around the field, nailing me at every ruck, every breakdown, every time I touched the ball. So it was a pretty brutal welcome to the game, but some fond memories.
Fast forward now, I think there'll be a few youngsters that probably say similar about you when it comes to
part of me hopes that I'm seen in the same kind of light as someone like Danny Grucock. That would be amazing. But hopefully there's some young guys running around with a little bit of fear for me chasing around the training field.
That was a good introduction to senior rugby, obviously going up against a player of that status. A few years at Bristol in your first spell there. What were the big learnings as you started your journey into professional rugby?
I think one of the biggest things was relationships, and that dovetails really nicely with your kind of life outside of rugby. So I was very fortunate. I was at university, and although I'd gone into professionalism from a rugby point of view, I was dovetailing too. I was going to university in the daytime and turning up for training in the early hours of the morning, and coming down later and joining every session I could over at Bristol. But the reason that I was able to thrive in that environment was the relationships I was able to build at the club. People like Matt Salter, Red and Chevy Pennycook, Joe Elab, Roy Winters, people like this who had a real influence on me as a younger player, how I should conduct myself, how I should engage and train, and how to get the most out of myself. And I think that was the biggest learning thing for me.
Has that helped shape how you behave in an environment with young players, with senior players, with coaches now?
Yeah, massively so. I think a big learning curve for me was actually when I left Bristol and joined Gloucester. Just through the sheer mechanics of it, Alex Brown, who was an idol of mine as I was kind of growing up, he was the first choice second row for Gloucester, and he still lived in Bristol. And because of the university element that I was dealing with, I also lived in Bristol. So for 2 years while I was playing at Gloucester, I commuted from Bristol up to Gloucester with Alex Brown and Will James, and with two senior second row professionals, one an England player and one a Wales player, two incredibly high calibre players, but also two very important social people in this club. They were very well liked, they had a good demeanour about them, and I learnt a lot from them, just trawling back and up an hour each way in the car every day, in terms of how to train, how to get the most out of myself, how to interact with people, how to sometimes be a grown-up and kind of take it on the chin, and also sometimes when to kind of push back. So again, I was very fortunate in that regard that I was able to lean on those relationships, and that set me up massively going forward.
Yeah, Gloucester was the next stop on your mini West Country tour, so to speak. Alex Brown was actually the first Gloucester player you paired with in the second row.
Yeah.
Again, another debut against Bath Rugby. You spent 2 years at Gloucester.
I did.
Very enjoyable time of your career?
Yeah, really enjoyable time. To be honest, when I left Bristol, I was a lot of potential, but not that much of a player, is my personal opinion. I think there were good things I did back then, but there were lots of deficiencies in my game. And when I got to Gloucester, I really progressed into a much higher calibre player. It was the first time where I really put on some muscle bulk. The kind of physical attributes that I had kind of came to the fore a little bit more. Working with Big Will James and Alex Brown gave me so much understanding of the line out. That became a really big feature of mine. And we had a good group of players. We had an incredibly exciting back line. We had a big gnarly forward pack, people like Olivier Zam, Andy Hazel, some really tough characters who'd been around in the game for a long time. And it wasn't a decision of mine when I ended up leaving Gloucester that I took lightly. It was more forced through the unfortunate circumstances around the passing of Tom Walkinshaw. But what was really important for me in my time at Gloucester is that was the first time I really got a sense of club value. And I think it's impossible, you saw in the recent derby up there how important the fans are to an organisation, and that was my kind of rite of passage through the shed and kind of getting to understand how important fans are in terms of making this game work. And that was something that was reflected when I came down here to Bath. But I think also a big part of that was moving to Gloucester was the first time I was regularly in the team. I joined Gloucester and I was one of the first choice players by the time I was kind of walking out the door. And when I joined, that wasn't the plan at all. So there was a big growth period for me there.
A big growth period, as you say. Saxons honours, England honours came in that period. Was that always a dream of yours, just to grow up, play rugby, play for your country? What were the memories like from that debut?
Well, firstly, yes. When I was younger, I mean, every child, you want to play for England, you want to play for your country, but I hadn't really thought about that too seriously. And as I kind of 14, 15, 16, you play some kind of age group county stuff, things got a bit better, and then Bristol actually released me. They said, thanks very much, but we don't think you've got the calibre right now to go all the way, carry on, and maybe we'll welcome you back. And thankfully they did, and I got back involved, and fast forward a few years, and I got some opportunity to play with the Saxons, and I got a phone call. I was on holiday at the time, got a phone call from a journalist to my hotel room saying, "Oh, congratulations, Dave, you've been selected in the EPS." And my response was, "Have I?" Like I was not. I hadn't had an official phone call or a letter. I was away on holiday, and I just got this phone call out of the blue, and suddenly I was involved with the senior team, and we were going on tour to Australia, and I was working with Mark Johnson, possibly the greatest second row to ever play for England, now the England coach, and he's now my head coach with England. It was a very, very surreal kind of introduction to kind of international rugby. But I think it's only really reflecting that you realise how big of an achievement that was. I think at the time you're always looking to try and develop and trying to climb the ladder a bit more, and even though you're in the dressing room, you want to have the number 4 or the number 5 shirt nailed on as yours. And I think for most of my career, I've always felt like I hadn't earned it. I wanted a bit more. I wanted to be a bit more of a player. And I think when you are of that mindset, it's very hard in the moment to really reflect and be like, I'm starting for England. Like that's a massive deal, and it's very hard to reflect on that, even when people tell you to do that. And I was very fortunate in a number of past internationals kind of reached out to me, and people who I'd never met. I kind of got text messages from an unknown number, just kind of introducing themselves and saying congratulations, welcome to the club, kind of thing, and that made it really feel quite special.
What are sort of your memories in that period? 24 caps, another 8 or so appearances in friendlies, probably should count as caps, definitely in your opinion, I can see it by your face. What are some of the proud moments and some of the biggest achievements in your eyes during that England career?
Crumbs. Beating New Zealand, losing to New Zealand, playing against New Zealand has got to be up there. I think it doesn't matter what the rankings say. The pedigree and history between England and New Zealand always makes that a very special occasion. France as well. There's a massive bonus there. Winning at the Millennium Stadium against Wales. My girlfriend's now Welsh, so that's a big special thing for me now to be able to bring that up every time the Six Nations comes up. I think the lasting memory for me is more an impression, and I think it's the England dressing room has got the names and cap numbers of everyone who's ever played for England on the dressing room wall. And when you are warming up in Twickenham, the stadium's empty, all the fans are outside in the beer tents and having a good time and all that kind of stuff. And you do all of your warm up, and the stadium's virtually empty. There's a few people come into the real hardcore rugby nosers watching warm-ups, but you go back into the dressing room, and then 10 minutes later you come up for the anthems. Suddenly the stadium's full. You haven't seen it fill up. It's not been a gradual thing. You just suddenly come out and it's full. And obviously the pyrotechnics in a 80,000-90,000 seater stadium, it feels like there's this wall of noise, just this mass of aura that you're kind of walking out into, and the haze from the pyrotechnics is just kind of misting in the air, and it feels like that distortion is caused by the noise. It's kind of so oppressing, and you kind of get the goosebumps and the tingles, and like no one can ever replace that. And even me describing it, it will never make anybody feel how it made me feel at the time. And I think that more than anything is the thing that I'll cherish.
In those England appearances at Gloucester helped you move on to Bath and on the third West Country club, debut at Newcastle, Stuart Hooper alongside you in the second row, really talented back line, some big muscly forwards to go with it. 174 appearances as we speak for Bath Rugby. It's probably the club that will be most synonymous with the name Dave Attwood. How do you feel about Bath Rugby, and how do you feel your time here has progressed over the two spells?
It's funny thinking back, because it was actually on that first England tour I kind of got collared by a few of the existing Bath lads, people like Lee Mears and Dave Flatman and Lewis Moody, people who senior internationals, people involved with the club who kind of collared me and were like, oh, just come along to Bath, and those kind of conversations started kind of come along. And in a very short period of time, I'd kind of erupted onto the scene, and there'd been a lack of second rows for want of. There was a period where there wasn't anyone really standing out in that category, and I was kind of on the verge of maybe being on the fringe of someone who could potentially step into that role and make it their own. And off the back of that, I kind of came into Bath and worked a very strong partnership with Stuart Hooper and Ryan Caldwell and Dom Day and a number of other guys over the years, and it's been an incredible privilege of mine to be able to work with all of those guys, all of whom have earned deserving honours over the years. I think one of the things that I've been most proud of is the calibre of people and the calibre of squad that I've been able to work with here at Bath. We've had some amazing people and some absolutely phenomenal players. You look at the calibre of players that have worn this jersey that I've been very fortunate. It's in like past weeks I've been kind of looking through old photos of me kind of playing, and you remember the Michael Claessens and Dan Hipkisses and Andy Beatties and Nick Abendenans and Carl Ferns and Sam Burgess and George Ford and Carl Eastman and Jonathan Joseph and Ant Watson, and the list is endless of these absolutely phenomenal players who achieved amazing things before they joined Bath, while they were with Bath, after Bath, and to stand in the trenches with those guys for such a long period of time. Like 174 appearances is a lot of rugby. And when you take time out to be away with international rugby, to be unavailable because you're injured, to go on loan to other places and all this kind of stuff, you spend a lot of time in this environment working on those relationships. And I think you're absolutely right. Bath Rugby is definitely going to be the club that I'm most commonly associated with. And I'm really proud of that. And I feel like the important thing for me is the growth that so many people have seen in other players, some of whom have left Bath Rugby and moved elsewhere, and I've been a part of their tapestry as much as they've been a part of mine. It's an incredibly well supported club. The fans, season ticket renewals are up year on year, every year. Everybody in Bath cares about the rugby, and they're positive and upbeat about the rugby even when we don't deliver the performances that we want to for them. And that kind of resilience of the fan is something that we're incredibly grateful for as a squad, and it's something I've been incredibly grateful for as a player. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think about with this club.
Yeah, you've had their backing for over your two spells and some big moments. Was the biggest moment running out at Twickenham in that Premiership final, but also perhaps a regret?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. The problem of having such unbelievable squads year on year on year on year. We look at, if you just take the Bath squad and you compare it to everyone else's squad across the Premiership, you think, right, well, Bath are going to be contenders this year. And that kind of 2015 season with 40 at 10 and Slam and Sam coming into the back row under Mike Ford and kind of going all the way to get to Twickenham, we'd ripped teams apart all year. We changed the way that attacking rugby was played, and unfortunately for us, we were overawed in the final, and that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, and something that I feel I've continually tried to instill in other younger players who hopefully will get the opportunity in years to come, is the reasons why I think we didn't click in the final, and the reasons why Saracens did and have done for years and years and years. And I think there's a great big learning curve there. And it was an incredibly proud moment for me. What was probably the most proud moment for me was just seeing so many Bath fans at Twickenham. I mean, there wasn't a comparison. It wasn't a 50-50 split. There was an absolute die-hard Bath supporting there. The trains flooding in, the car parks full, flags everywhere. It felt like a home game for us. And tremendous credit to Saracens, their pedigree and everything. They took the plaudits on the day. But it did make me feel a real sense of pride about this city and this club, and a real desire for this club to be back there. Because if that's what we can do and then we can deliver on the day, that's going to be a very special occasion. That's
a really proud experience of English rugby and Bath fans in particular. Let's move over to France. Your short spell with Toulon, amazing experience, a beautiful coastal town, a lot of memories which I'm sure you have. What was that period like, and how was your French?
Je parle un peu français, pas du tout. To be honest, it was an incredibly difficult period for me. We had some things going on in my personal life. There were some issues that I had obviously with Bath at the time, and we found this opportunity for me to go down to the south of France and really grow as a player. And I think what I found down in France was a love of the game that I didn't realise I had. I think the Premiership is a tough league. It's such a tough, grueling competition. And you look at the way that this league has panned out, and it's started to stretch out now in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but until kind of February, a win or a loss, and pretty much every position could have changed. So that speaks of the tough nature of this Premiership. And over the years, as someone who plays in this environment, you become more statistical based, you become more pragmatic, you play less to space and more to statistics, and that means you kick the ball when maybe the fans want you to run the ball, and you do what you think is right as opposed to what you think might be fun or whatnot. And the big difference getting down to France was a very different attitude that the French have towards rugby, and the tremendous pride and passion and really uncompromising nature around home fixtures, and more of an opportunity to chance your arm when you travel away. And they analyse outcome more than decision down there, and I think we analyse decision more than outcome up here in the Premiership. And getting down to France and having the opportunity to kind of spread your legs, like you say, it's sunny all the time. I had a flat with a balcony overlooking the sea, and suddenly from feeling kind of tough and gritty, and it's about getting stronger in the gym and getting fitter, and then it was about flair and about passing the ball and about seeing space and opportunity. And then you combine that with the calibre of player that I was incredibly fortunate enough to join down in Toulon. I was roommates with Brian Habana in my first week, and then I'm having a barbecue with Dwayne Vermeulen and Juan Lobe, and it was an absolute child's dream. It was my dream, kind of thing. So that was a really exciting opportunity for me, and I think it made me a significantly better rugby player, and I think that was seen in the season I played back for Bath after I rejoined.
You name all those players, it sounds like fantasy rugby, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It was one of those teams that were unbelievable in that period. And is that where you learned the behind the back pass with the no look?
Yeah. Try and actually, Marlon taught me that as a little name drop there. I think one of the big things I learned that I took forward was about taking control and ownership of what I needed to do and how I wanted to behave, and that was as much off the field as it was on the field. I started doing things that I wanted to do because it put me in a better headspace, rather than because I thought it was probably the right thing for the rugby. And what I found is being in a better headspace clearly made me a better rugby player. And I think the following year I was Players Player, Forward Player of the Year here at Bath, and 100% if I hadn't had that opportunity to grow and kind of experience a different way of doing things and develop that sense of maturity, I wouldn't have done that.
With that sense of maturity, going into a period of unknown with COVID as a professional athlete, not knowing when the next game was coming, not knowing how you were going to train, the little smile says you may have enjoyed that period, but how did you cope as a professional athlete in that period, and then coming back to playing, obviously with no fans?
It was weird, wasn't it? Well, I mean, you're training, you're playing, and then you get called into a meeting on a Monday, and it's like, right, everyone go home, take a dumbbell with you, take a weights plate with you. No one's got any idea how this is going to work. We don't know when we're going to be playing rugby again. You're not allowed to socialise with people, so suddenly lads were ordering stuff off the internet. You're getting the kind of balls that are like a half, but you're just passing against the wall. But it's hard to be motivated to do that, because how long before you're actually back playing the game again? Are we ever going to be back playing the game again? And we're weekly Zoom meetings with your family, and we had weekly Zoom meetings with the club, and we're practicing scrum technique with a pint of beer on your back to try and make it a bit more fun. And it was a very strange period of time, and I think it was very difficult for so many people. But trying to just be purely focused on rugby here, it sent people one of two directions. One thing it did massively is it emphasised how important life outside of rugby was. And I think a lot of people started doing things, generating hobbies, whether that was they got a dog or they took up crochet or they started cycling or swimming or they whatever they did outside, maybe some guys did courses online, it gave them some sense of fulfillment that hitherto had only really been fulfilled through playing the game. And I think what you saw when people came back is a thirst for the game. People wanted to be involved in rugby, but there was almost a sense of indifference and pragmatism about how we came back. Games didn't seem as important to players, but the quality of the product was even higher. And I think that was kind of what I felt out in Toulon, is the change of mindset, being less concerned about the output actually meant that the output was higher. And I think that's what we've seen in the years coming back from COVID, is that actually the standard of the game is as high as it's ever been right now. You look at the quality of passing and kicking and tackling, and there is so much about the game which is progressing, and I think a large part of that is because there's been a little bit of a shift outside of it.
And you saw a lot of that in that Bristol team that you were part of that went on to win the Challenge Cup. Was it the only regret from that time was the fact that there weren't any Bristol fans present?
Yeah, that was the really tough thing, because for a big proud club, and for a club a bit like we were in 2015, the rugby we played all year had absolutely murdered teams. We won the league by 8 points or 10 points clear or something like that. And the fact that we weren't able to share that with the fans, it was obviously really clear. All the time I was at Bristol, I was still living in Bath, and it was still very clear how important the rugby was to the people. And you saw that with the decision that the government made, that rugby would go ahead and football would go ahead even if fans couldn't attend, because it gave people a sense of focus and community and nuance that they otherwise didn't have. And I think the saddest thing for me was earning those kind of accolades and that kind of achievement, but not being able to share it with fans in the flesh. That's always going to be an unfortunate wrinkle for me. Let's
be more positive about that day then. Pinnacle of your career alongside your England caps?
Yeah, I think so. Campaign trophies are hard to get. I'm very, very fortunate that I've played international rugby, and there's all sorts of trophies available in international rugby because obviously they're such pinnacle games. But campaign trophies, so you're talking European Cups, Premierships, Championships, Six Nations or World Cups, those kind of trophies are much harder to come by because you have to be full tilt all the time. This league is so long and so physically demanding, and there are so many things that can derail you, from injuries to refereeing decisions to disciplinary decisions to players having children. All these kind of things can go wrong and scupper it, all of which are outside of your control. And to be there at the races, at the start line, at the finish line every week that you need to be in order to kind of lift that trophy is a really, really tough thing. And there are some people who are very fortunate to have multiple kind of trophies. But the understanding and reverence I have for every single one of those is unmatched.
Yeah. Coming back to Bath then, after that spell with Bristol, nice to round off your career at a club that obviously means a lot to you as well.
Yeah, massively. I felt with the transitions that were underway, having talked with Johan, that there was an opportunity to try and push this club in a really positive direction. And I think some of that work has begun. There's a lot to be done. But it was a nice opportunity for me, like you say. When people talk about me, more often than not, they're going to talk about me as a Bath player. They will obviously acknowledge that I was born in Bristol and I played for Bristol, but 174 appearances for a club, you can't walk away from that. And I think the opportunity for me to kind of round off and finish here with Bath and help try and drive this bus in a really positive direction is a tremendously fulfilling opportunity for me, and something I've been very happy to be a part of this year. And I really hope that some of the younger guys in the squad, maybe some of the older guys in the squad, have been able to take some of the things that I've preached to them or displayed to them or showed to them throughout the year, and it will help their tapestry grow, and they'll be better players for the future.
We've talked a lot about the actual rugby. What I know is important to you is memories and friendships that you've made. How can you just describe how important they are to you and how much this game has given to you?
Rugby is a strange sport because the amount of passion and physical determination that you have to exert on a daily basis, the kind of continual negativity and oppression, the humorous jibes, emotionally it's a taxing sport. It's a taxing profession. You're selected, you're not selected, you're in the team, you're not in the team, you're valuable, you're not valuable, you're injured, you're unavailable to do what you're supposed to do. Every week there's 50 guys dealing with that emotion, and typically men aren't very good with feeling emotion, so that kind of all goes into a melding pot, and what that does do is create incredibly tight bonds. And I think there are plenty of people that I've played rugby with now, and I could pick the phone up to any one of them and say, look, I need your help, and they'd find a way to help. And it's very hard to manufacture those kinds of relationships, and rugby is one of the blessed opportunities to do that. And I've got a Rolodex of people who I consider incredibly important to me, and I hope is kind of reciprocated on the other side of things. And I think that's a really special thing about our sport.
Yeah, 18 years of collecting those memories and friendship, half your life as a professional athlete. What would Dave Attwood now say to Dave Attwood, 18, starting out his career?
18 years ago, what would I say? What would I say? I don't know. The truth is, I wouldn't be the player I am now if I hadn't have walked that path. And I did some speed coaching, and maybe when I was 31, I was looking for a way to. I had a bit of a knee injury, and I was concerned I couldn't do certain things in the gym, certain plyometrics and stuff. So I was looking for other avenues to get better. If I'd have done that speed work when I was 21, 22, I wouldn't have taken it that seriously. I wouldn't have applied myself. I wouldn't have valued it. When I was 31 and I did it, it completely changed my game. It changed the output I could achieve, and I could see that. But I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have been able to do that at a younger age. So I think it's very difficult from that point of view. The big thing I would say is you are overweight, you need to lose weight, you need to get fitter, and you need to get stronger. And it took me probably 10 years to really, really, really find a way to do that. And that wasn't because I wasn't aware of it, but being aware of the problem is just one step in terms of dealing with the problem. And I think once I kind of transitioned out of that, it gave me a lot of perspective on how I could grow as a player, how I could work on myself, and not just turn up to work, and I would be made better by the people around me. And I think that's the big thing I would try and impart on a younger me.
I hope you found it enjoyable talking all the way through your career. There's obviously one cliche question to ask. What's next?
The big question, I think I kind of alluded to it earlier, it's a scary time. It's a scary time, and I think the truth is I'm not entirely certain what the next chapter is. I'm fortunate in that I've had some direction and some idea. I did an undergraduate degree, I did a law conversion. I'd like to be involved in law. I'd love to be involved with the kind of disciplinary side of rugby a little bit and help. I feel like there's a really messy tangle there at the minute. A lot of people trying to do the right thing for the sport and for the people, but it feels very messy at the minute, and I feel like there's some inroads there I can have an impact on. But I also think one of the things I've learned so much in my time as a professional rugby player is about conduct, is about how you can behave to get the most out of yourself, out of the people either side of you, out of the people on the opposite side to you. And I think I would like to find some way that I can help impart that on other people, whether that's in rugby or in business. Or I feel like there's so much to be learnt about culture and relationships in terms of performance and output, and I think I'd like to lean into that side of things.
Well, you certainly have the knowledge from the past 18 years, over 350 appearances at senior level in your career.
Much rugby, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so much rugby.
And I can remember every single game.
I bet you can, and every single line-up too.
Yes,
But
yeah.
a huge congratulations on a fantastic career, and everyone at Bath Rugby and the rugby world wishes you all the best for the future.
Thanks very much, very kind.